Everybody ready? Okay, colleagues, good morning. I think we'll come to order now. Welcome everyone to the May 26th meeting of the Executive Standing Committee. We are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. And the municipality acknowledges the Peace and Friendship Treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And colleagues, if I could ask for a motion to approve the minutes of April 28th, please. It's Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Cuddle. Any discussion or changes to the minutes, colleagues? Seeing none. All those in favor with hands. And the minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. That brings us to the approval of the order of business. Mr. Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or changes?
There is one request for this meeting today. We are requesting that item 13.2.1 be considered as the first item of business.
Very good. Any, I don't see any discussion on that matter. And no other changes to the order? Seeing not. Colleagues, all those in favor of the amended order of business? And that's approved. Very good. Thank you. Any business arising out of the minutes? Seeing none. Any declarations of conflict of interest this morning? Seeing none. Motions of reconsideration, motions of rescission, consideration of deferred business, notice of tabled matters, all none. Mr. Clerk, any correspondence this morning?
Correspondence has been received for item 13.2.1 and has been circulated to all members of Executive Standing Committee.
Thank you very much. Petitions. Any petitions this morning? Not seeing anybody. Okay. We are into section 11, the public participation section. There are no pre-registered speakers, but I will call 3 times to see if anyone would like to speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Is there anyone who would like to speak? So no speakers, no information items brought forward. And that brings us to section 13 of the agenda. And as mentioned, we're going to begin with item 13.2.1, the Emergency Management Project Charter and Crisis Communications Plan. And we will welcome staff to take the podium, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and thank you for seeing us this morning. We're here to talk about the Emergency Management Programme Charter and the Crisis Communications Plan. So to give some background, we're going to go through the agenda here. It's going to be the background on how we developed the Programme Charter, what the consultants report initially said, the Emergency Management Standard we've been talking about. You may have heard it as the EMAP standard, and then we'll be talking about the Programme Charter, and then I will hand it over to my colleague Brendan Murphy to talk about the MCCP, or the Municipal Crisis Communications Plan. So the Emergency Management Programme Charter. So the background for this, in September 2023, KI Emergency Management was engaged to do a review of documents related to emergency programme management at the municipality of HRM. In February 2024, the Emergency Management Planning Committee was briefed on the results of that document review to assess the appropriateness and usefulness of the documents that were reviewed, and by the spring of 2024 the report was submitted to the EM Planning Committee, and then I think the information report was generated for the Executive Standing Committee. So the review of the current state of the emergency management documentation followed in line with the pillars of emergency management, which is prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response and recovery. The review was conducted, as mentioned, against a recognised international standard or a best practice for emergency management, and as such a series of prioritised projects were identified. A little bit about the international standard. It is the Emergency Management Standard, or EMAP. It is an ANSI EMAP 5/2022 standard. It is a set of 73 standards by which any programme in North America that's looking for emergency management accreditation, that's how they're evaluated. KI used the EMAP standard as a best practices approach to benchmark our programme and determine the relevance of all of our documents, accuracy, thoroughness of the programme as it stood at that time. And by extension, this was an assessment carried out on a municipality's emergency management programme as a whole. So, on looking at the recommendations from that report, there was around 12 individual projects were identified. We looked at those projects and decided that there are a number of other projects the Emergency Management Office undertake or have areas of responsibility for. So the programme charter was a way to create strategic portfolio management. And so it gives us a better line of sight with the municipality's long-term goals and provides that comprehensive portfolio management approach to managing those projects that were identified. Some of the priority projects that we may have heard about, obviously the Municipal Crisis Communications Plan is one, the Emergency Management Strategic Plan for HRM, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, or CEMP, the Hazard Risk Vulnerability Assessment, and the Emergency Management Concept of Operations. These projects all have interdependencies and again fall under that strategic portfolio management under the programme charter. And with that, that concludes my initial briefing on the programme charter, and I would like to hand it over to Brett.
Thanks very much, Colin. Again, my name, Bretton Murphy, Managing Director of Corporate Communications. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the Executive Standing Committee. The Municipal Crisis Communications Plan is designed to provide a comprehensive framework for the Halifax Regional Municipality to manage communications during emergencies and crises. The most recent version was updated in 2024, drawing from industry standards and best practices. It's also grounded in recent experiences, such as Hurricane Fiona in 2022 and the Tantallon wildfire in 2023. The MCCP was also informed by input from business units across the organization, specifically and in particular, Community Safety, Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency, and Halifax Regional Police, as well as the executive leadership team via the Emergency Management Committee, which approved the plan in September 2024. The plan was most recently tested and validated as part of the emergency response to the identification of crystallized picric acid at the Bedford Institute of Oceanography in January 2025. So when we look at the MCCP, the Municipal Crisis Communications Plan, the real focus is to help ensure timely, accurate, and consistent communication across internal and external audiences. The plan is activated when an emergency or crisis exceeds the scope of a single business unit, requiring elevated cross-functional coordination. Key objectives of the plan include positioning the communications as essential to the effective crisis management and management roles, and identifying their place within that system, the roles and responsibilities of communicators in support of the ICS, or the Incident Command System. Also, it's about providing protocols and tools that integrate with the broader emergency management structure, or ICS. There are several core components to the MCCP. The Chief Administrative Officer holds the authority to activate crisis communications protocols. The exception here is for situations where there's immediate threat from an active aggressor or a lockdown, in which a response needs to be initiated by HRP, RCMP, or HRFE. The plan provides definitions for what constitutes an issue, an emergency, and a crisis. An issue, just briefly, touching on those definitions, is an emerging routine or current problem, event, or trend that could affect the organization and its reputation. Now, these can be relatively minor in scope, but can develop into an emergency or a crisis. Emergencies are defined as situations often dangerous that require prompt action, sometimes beyond normal procedures, to limit impacts to people, property, and the environment. And a crisis is a significant event, often escalated from an existing issue or an emergency that threatens life, property, or the environment, and impacts the municipality's ability to deliver services, carry on with routine business, or achieve strategic objectives. Another core component is that it guides considerations for internal and external audiences. This is helping us to identify audiences categorized as need to know, those who are directly impacted by the incident and the response, as well as the want to know audiences, those people who are seeking information but not directly impacted. It also defines types of notifications and communications tools. This includes public notifications the municipality may use and what they mean, whether it be a state of local emergency, shelter in place, or an evacuation order. The plan identifies the support model for communications activities. This, in alignment with the incident command system, outlines that the managing director of corporate communications has the responsibility, they or their designate, to appoint an information officer who works with the incident commander to identify, plan, and execute appropriate communications activities. It also provides considerations for communications collaboration before, during, and after a crisis. Now, key to successful crisis communications is having a well-established foundation of trust and effective working relationships both within the organization and with partner agencies. These need to be fostered well in advance of a crisis. And these often include or involve participating in inter-organizational exercises. During and after a crisis, it's critical to regularly verify and document the validity of internal processes so they can be improved. And then timely debriefs after a crisis ensures lessons learned are used to inform future plans and responses. This next slide touches on the 7 guiding principles to crisis communications. These you'll find as common themes across crisis communications models in many jurisdictions around the world. We've identified these both, as I say, in reference to what is best practice, but also in what we know from our experience to be working best and resonating with the audiences we need to communicate with. Be first and be timely, even only to acknowledge that an emerging matter is in play and advise when the next update will be shared. This helps reassure audiences where and when they will find credible information about the matter at hand. Be accurate and transparent. This is critical, again, to building trust with audiences. There's no room for speculative or otherwise unconfirmed information when communicating in a crisis, and such messaging can erode the audience's trust. Now, combined with being first and providing timely updates, accuracy and transparency may mean confirming that some information remains unknown. By embracing this approach, incident command and municipal leadership can ensure streamlined approvals and distribution of information. Be clear and use plain language. Avoid jargon, abbreviations, acronyms, and technical language. This will help ensure audiences understand the matter at hand and what is required of them. Be direct and provide meaningful actions people can take. Communications needs to clearly identify the actions audiences are required to take. If communicating for awareness only, the message and channels used to share it must clearly indicate this, while messages requiring action by specific audiences, these should be targeted to those who need to know. Be empathetic, respectful, and trauma-informed. Acknowledging the situation and its impacts on different audiences is critical. Communications activities must be respectful of the experience the intended audiences are living through and must allow space for two-way communication that builds understanding. Be accessible, meaning meeting the audience where they are. Ensuring audiences can connect with the organization continues to foster that trust, while communications activities must be able to adapt to the needs of the audiences most impacted. This includes considerations for multiple languages and leveraging the tools and channels most commonly used by those we're intending to connect with. Be concise. When possible, and in balance with all the other principles, communication should be concise, emphasizing the most important information audiences need to know and the step-by-step actions they need to take. Additional resources and tools are also included in the MCCP in the appendices section that can be leveraged by those who are tasked with providing communication support. One of the key tools is the critical response timeline, the first 60 minutes. This is a guided template to assist whoever is first supporting communications to an emerging incident. It applies a consistent checklist approach that ensures key considerations and details are addressed. And of course, the capacity to compile all the details in the checklist is subject to the information available at the time. Incident types are also provided as a reference to clarify the anticipated response required depending upon the scope and scale of the incident. These range from type 5, example, a house fire, to type 1, a natural disaster. Another resource is the criteria and guidelines for activating mass notification tools, including the Provincial Alert Ready and the municipality's HFX alert system. As well, there's a protocol for communicating with those who are identified on the municipality's Voluntary Vulnerable Persons Registry. Lastly, here is a reference to the summary of our emergency communications playbook. And this is a regularly updated centralized collection of communications standard operating procedures that are to be used by communication staff during an emergency or crisis. As part of the emergency communications playbook, there are 3 phases, starting from when the incident is first identified, through the initial 60 minutes, and into what may be several operational periods. Within each phase, the playbook establishes a basic order of operations as depicted in the chart. Now the font is fairly small there, but it goes through each stage, and each of these phases basically touches on the following: providing support for public notifications as needed. 2, posting critical information on halifax.ca. 3, pushing information via primary social media channels, ideally linking to that information, that critical information that has been placed on the website. 4, issuing a public service announcement. 5, regularly updating content on those designated web pages. 6, responding to media inquiries and facilitating media briefings as required. And 7, continuing the cycle through each operational period. This order of operations is assessed and adjusted at the recommendation of corporate communications, pending the evolving status of a crisis and the objectives identified by the incident commander. Key to successful delivery of any crisis comms effort is being prepared and having a plan that is scalable and dynamic, allowing for responsiveness to changing situations. This concludes the presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Colin and Breton. And colleagues, I'll just see if there is anyone who wants to add a word, and I see the Deputy Mayor, please.
Important presentation. It's interesting. In my 9 some years here, I've been involved in a number of crises within our community, and I've always been impressed with the professionalism that we have, and we're very fortunate of that. One of the big ahas for me is, and you alluded to in your presentation, is when there are information gaps, boy, the residents fill up those gaps, and that can be dangerous, right? It's very, 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 very dangerous. There was no mention of the role of the elected officials, the councillors, because the councillors know their community better than anybody else. And the residents of those communities will go to the elected official for leadership and guidance. And I think there's value there, but I will also speak quite frankly, there's a fine line. The counselor can be very valuable or they can be counterproductive. So I don't know in the orientation for my newer colleagues sitting around the chambers here, but we've seen in these situations, and I'll allude to, the wildfires and other situations where it can be counterproductive. So is there any guidance, is there a framework, is there any training, to understand if one of us, God forbid, has a crisis in our district? I think I personally have a good handle on it because I've been around long enough, but for not everybody. What's the role? And as you're gathering information, it's sometimes premature to get information out, but residents are going to the elected official. What's going on? And the elected official has a way to respond. That way, less challenge of those gaps being filled in with incorrect information. That incorrect information can be dangerous. So that's my first question. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, and there's an opportunity to expand on the role of the elected official.
We'll just hear from the CAO and then go to Brett and Colleen.
Thank you very much. So we, of course, had a role in onboarding the new mayor and council to try to convey the role and responsibility regarding emergency management. We have been fortunate in that we have not had a significant event with new mayor and council yet. I do envision we need to do periodic refreshers so that we will keep mayor and council top of mind in terms of awareness of their role. And of course, the mayor is the official spokesperson for the municipality if we are operating in an actual event on behalf of mayor and council. And the topic of the engagement of elected officials is actually coming up through a CAO advisory table that the Department of Emergency Management has established. I'm one of the CAOs that's on that table. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago. Juanita Spencer from NSFM, the CEO of NSFM, is also attending that. And one of the identified needs is that NSM has agreed to do some additional training, NSM and the Department of Emergency Management, on the role of elected officials in terms of communications when there is an emergency event. The issues that were being raised as concerns from some of the CAOs around the province is the potential for councillors, if they unwittingly distribute incorrect information, they could be taking on personal liability, they could be creating a public safety risk. There's also been some incidents in emergency events around the province where I understand elected officials, caring for their constituents, got in their car, went to a place, may have unwittingly exposed themselves to risk or hazard without really thinking it through. And we never want to create another emergency event.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
And sorry to interrupt, but it was time. So I agree wholeheartedly, but there's the flip side of that too, where there's value of that elected official.
Yes.
And being clear on what that role is. The mayor is a spokesperson but for the municipality overall, but residents aren't contacting the mayor. They're contacting elected officials. So just sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure.
So the thing we implemented during the wildfire and during the 2 floods in 2023 that seemed to work well was using, in addition to the normal send residents through 311, a conduit through the Councillor Support Office, whereby there's one place to centrally triage issues that councillors are hearing or concerns that councillors have, and then having that person link with the ICS structure. And I'll turn it over to Brett and Colin to see if there's anything else we need to add.
That touched on big part of it. The one thing I would just want to reassure that with the plan and recognizing that we talk about the need to know audiences and the want to know.
Right.
And you'll see mayor and council in that need to know, and the intention is to ensure we have processes, as the CAO has indicated, where we have clear protocol that says here's the means by which council, the mayor and council will receive the most up-to-date, accurate information so that they in turn feel confident in sharing that. And where possible, the notion of the single source of truth becomes so important, where we're able to redirect residents to say, if you go here, you will find the most up-to-date information, and relieving a bit of that pressure, ideally, on counselors who feel like, well, I don't have that answer for you, I'll go find it. But knowing that the answer that is available, that is accurate and timely, is in a
And my
centralized
point is just
place.
making sure that's crystal clear for all
Right.
16 of us here and understanding that role, right?
Point taken.
So I appreciate that. I have other questions. I'll come back. My time's up. Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'm moving to Councillor Cuddle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to build on Tony's points a little bit here, because I think one thing that needs to be understood is the difference between the organization versus elected officials. And how we're actually perceived by the community and our role in the community is different than that of the municipality, and kind of the risk averse, and strategic and organized approach taken by and expected by the municipality. There's a different set of expectations on elected officials, particularly if an event is happening in your district. So generalized information to the mayor and council isn't necessarily addressing the concerns of the councillors whose areas are being impacted. And I'm not convinced yet, and perhaps there'll be some more work on this, about how the council support office works in kind of receiving information and passing it along. I think that we need to look at the councillors, if there's an incident in your district, that there's a more direct route to communicate with the emergency office, because me getting a critical piece of information with the expectation that I then pass that on to Quentin or to perhaps a council support person who doesn't know my district, hasn't worked with me, and that information accurately getting passed on to I don't know who, I think creates room for a lot of error. Councillors do know our districts best, and if people are contacting us, which they will, and we've got to recognize and acknowledge that, having somebody in a crisis moment call us and saying to them, we'll call 311. Well, that's the system that's in place. It's not necessarily like there's no guarantee that that information is going to happen if that person's in a position to call 311. I just feel that there needs to be a more robust communication tree between, again, the councillors whose districts might be impacted and the emergency response office. And the council support office was at one point operating 9 to 5, or that wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. And so unless you're going to actually spend some time in supporting the council support office, having some clear parameters, is that a 24/7 stand-up? How does that work? Who's the key person? None of that's in place. And it feels very loosey-goosey at the moment that would be where we get directed to. So I think the consideration of the role of the elected official in the communication plan needs to be more defined, because in respect to what our potential role is, the value we can add, but also the expectations that are upon us. We need to define that more so that we don't, people don't go rogue, right? Like right now it feels like it's kind of being so contained that there is no option but to maybe go rogue. I don't want to go rogue. I think we need, but the system as it's being explained right now I don't feel it's enough.
I see Bill has come down, but the CEO would just like a word, and then we'll go to Bill.
Yes, so when we activate the incident command system, there's a couple of positions in it that potentially we could go away and consider how it works in conjunction with the Counselor Support Office. One is the role of the agency administrator, who's me, in the CAO office, but the other one is the liaison officer if we activate that in the ICS structure. And there's a lot of macro level change going on in Nova Scotia in emergency management right now. One thing you will see that will be very different in go forward large emergency events, I would say from fall onward, is going to be real-time situational awareness using artificial intelligence. And we will have much better information coming into us to be aware of what's going on, you know, through monitoring of social media, through public comments. And not to say that there might not still be very valuable insights that counselors are able to provide, and we need to collect and receive them, but also what's coming in from an individual counselor's district needs to be information that feeds into emergency management, but the emergency management team needs to be isolated and able to prioritize from the perspective of dealing with the emergency. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Executive Standing Committee. Bill Moore, Commissioner of Public Safety. I just want to put this into context because this plan coming forward is, I would say, kind of our second step in relation to try to clarify some of those issues that you spoke to, Councillor Cuttle, in relation to making sure those, because we know there was no real plan, quite frankly, in the previous responses. It was best effort. And so what we're trying to do, and we'll certainly take away your comments in relation to that, but I also want to put that into the context of the role that I'm in now, because I think there's a continuance of this is a crisis plan that is kick in when it's over and above regular responses. I know I've had emails from different councillors here around events that have happened in areas, whether it be a small wildfire or house fires or those kind of things. And so I'm going to be working with both HRP, RCMP, and the Halifax Fire to kind of get a protocol in place to be able to say this is when you will expect to get notifications. I know that is happening in a piecemeal fashion in some cases, but that's one of the things that I've actually put on my work plan, my internal work plan, is to work across those so that if it looks and walks and talks like this type of an event, this is how mayor and council would be notified, and the councillor in the area will be notified, because right now it could be tightened up a little bit. So I think that will complement this plan, and then we can work at take it to the next level as well. So I just wanted to offer those comments.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move along on the board here to Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, maybe I direct it to you guys. So there's a few things. I totally agree with the previous comments of the councillors. And also, I just want to add to it. So I was listening to your presentation. So in an emergency, do we have access to drones? Do we have access to emergency transit buses? Do we have access to alternate routes? And with communication, is it possible to have the communication office, emergency office, send out something directly to that counselor in the district that the emergency is taking place, to their Facebook, to their communications? Because like Councillor Cottle mentioned, they're going to contact us directly, and they're not going to contact 311. They're going to contact us directly. So if you could provide us with some form of communication where on an emergency that we can relay that information out. And before I finish, the other thing is about you mentioned about notifications. Are they color coded? So if it's code blue, code red, code orange, does the actual community understand what those codes are? So those are some of the questions I have.
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair to you. In terms of the communication to councillors, typically what we make sure we do is, coming back to the plan, is the information is the central source of truth. We would provide that information as immediately as possible on our platforms, and we would be advising all of our key audiences, including mayor and council, say, here is the most up-to-date information that allows each of those individuals to share it through their networks. So that there's with often the case, the kind of when things get passed along, if something gets sent separately to different folks, say, here's something for you, and then they try to forward it, there can be some lost translation. Whereas we try to make sure when information is sent out to mayor and council, they have the most up-to-date information. They know where the resources are. And for example, on social media, we have a protocol in place that ensures that when there is a significant crisis, a post is placed on all of our platforms saying, for the information related to this incident will be found here. We're not posting separate information on different platforms. We're directing everyone to one location for that central source truth. And what we try to do is encourage others to do the same on their platform. So instead of them trying to manage the information on an individual platform and keep it up to date, it's saying, go here for the most update. And that alleviates, I believe, members of council from having to try to manage their separate channels instead of saying, this is where you'll get the information. In terms of some of the tools in place, and I know Bill may have some thoughts on this, but the notion of what's available to us through Incident Command. Yes, there are tools available, whether it's through transit, whether it's through HRFE, which has access to drones for different purposes, but there are a lot of rules and regulations around their use. Also, partners would have access to different tools, whether it be the province or the federal government. And then in terms of the codes that may be used in notifications, through both the Alert Ready system and HFX Alert, we have templates set up that indicate if a message is being shared, it's just very clear. So they don't have to worry about understanding what a code red or a code orange or a code blue is. They're told very clearly, this is the situation and this is the action we're requesting that you take, and this is where you can go for more information. So to try to make it as coming back to plain language and accessible.
Okay, so in reference, the reason why I brought up the reference of the emergency transit bus, on Lucasville Road, there was a transit bus that ran down Lucasville Road during the fires. So is that part of the protocol for the emergency to pick up vulnerable residents? Or because the feedback that I got, I wasn't in council then, but the feedback that I got was that where is the bus going? It was going straight down Lucasville Road. And ironically, we don't have a bus down Lucasville Road. But my point is that part of the emergency preparedness when something like the wildfires take place?
Through to Councillor Young, so of course any municipal assets can be deployed to respond to emergencies, and it would depend on the nature of the event. I'm trying to recall what happened there during the wildfire with the bus, but I know we may have been using transit buses to help evacuate the long-term care facilities that were in that area. But certainly we have the assets available to deploy as required. And of course, whatever the situation is, we try to figure out how we best communicate what's going on at that point in time. Bill, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, CAO. To the councillor, I don't know that particular incident, but I was just going to basically reiterate the same thing the CAO just said in those cases. But I can say we have a very strong relationship with transit. Transit's one of the first business units that we employ on a number of bases in relation to. And to your question around drones, we have access to drones. Both RCMP, the regional police, I believe fire, and also the ground search and rescue teams have the ability to use RPAS is the term for it. I won't get into the acronyms, but yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hartling, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for this report. I have a few thoughts on it. I think I'm going to start again with the, if I could also chime in, kind of speaking to what Deputy Mayor Mancini and followed up with Councillor Cuttle as well. I think it's important to acknowledge how constituents communicate with HRM already, and I think that that's maybe why it's so, I'm going to say scary to not be in the loop, because that is a big part of our job daily, is to communicate with residents in our district. So I would just encourage EMO and the communications team to understand that, given that that is how, we train people to communicate with the municipality, that we would leave that piece of communication and the way that they communicate with us regularly out of this dialogue, I think is a mistake. If I could just say too, on social media, I understand that you were saying that there might be some AI in monitoring, social media. What I would say to that is that I know that just about every, for example, Facebook group that I am a part of, you need to be a member. So a lot of that is private. You would never gain awareness of that information on your own. So again, just in terms of, information that I could feed to EMO by virtue of being a member of all that. And then also, in terms of online and media communication, comments are a big part and part of the problem, if I'm being honest, because people chime in and they make a lot of comments. Some of them are accurate, some of them are not. And I would just like to point out that maybe we might consider turning off comments or saying, if you have comments, please direct it to here, that sort of thing, so that we can work on eliminating some of the chatter and to your point, focus on the single source of truth. So those would be my immediate takeaways from that. And then the last piece is that I'm a little surprised by how little I noticed that there were 2 bullet points, but very little in the way of communication with the media. They play an equally big role in terms of communication. Probably, their audience is bigger than any single counselor's, probably anybody else's. I would have thought that and would have expected to see bigger engagement there. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, not seeing anybody jump in with any responses there, so we'll move along to Councillor Deagle-Gammon, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So it's interesting because I think councillors have sort of 2 roles. One is get out of the way and don't add to a crisis, and then the other one is to be responsive to our constituents who are calling us. So it's kind of interesting, and I actually appreciate everything that's in the report. Moving people to the one place where the information is there, and information is going to change and be fluid hour to hour, day to day. So it's hard to stay on top and be current when you're dealing with a crisis. My worry, and one thing I would like you to speak a little bit to, if you wouldn't mind, is with other orders of government. Because sometimes as a counselor, you're saying and directing, and you're taking that very safe place of directing people to where they should be. But there are other orders of government that might be saying something different. And we sometimes get pitted against each other. So how do we deal with that in your comms plan? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor, and through the chair to you. This is something that I will say, since my arrival in over a dozen years ago to the municipality, when I think about the work that's been done on the communications front and developing those relationship partnerships, collaboration with colleagues, it has improved and been enhanced, I think, year over year with between staff at the different levels. We work regularly with and have developed relationships with colleagues at the province and through the province at the feds. And we sometimes have direct relationships with the federal government. The clarity around ICS really helps us all because it identifies who's in charge and then how we support one another. And so what I find that clarity through the emergency management system, that training is in place with the province and with others. So when we do exercises at Eric Spicer, we are in the room with our provincial colleagues and at times federal colleagues, and that is invaluable for that clarity of the roles we play, how we support one another, and providing clear communication to residents, and then in turn trying to assist our audiences internally with understanding the information that's shared. So from an administrative perspective, I feel a high level of confidence in how we can align and collaborate. But I can't necessarily speak to on the political side amongst elected officials.
And that's where my concern is, because we talked about NSFM providing training with municipal elected officials. I wonder if the same kinds of thing is happening at the provincial level. Thanks.
I can answer that question. Yes, it will be. And the other thing that's new and different is, of course, the province now has a separate Department of Emergency Management, which has been in existence for almost a year now, and a Deputy Minister of Emergency Management. So they will be, on a go-forward basis, in close alignment with us, administration to administration, in terms of agreed upon actions and messaging, which then we independently distribute to our elected officials to try to keep our elected officials informed. The other new thing that will occur in structure is the establishment of regional emergency operations centers. There's going to be 6-ish established around the province. You may remember last year the province introduced a new Emergency Management Act, and there'll be regulations coming under that act this fall, is our understanding. But also the REOCs are another new intervention into the emergency management structure provincially that will help us have additional resources and additional alignment, and I think better tools to disseminate information.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and we'll go to Councillor White, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. My question was about the alert systems. If there's something clear there now, how we know what type of thing would go through the provincial alert system versus Halifax alerts. And then further to that, what about emergencies with Halifax Water or with the bridges? How do we interact or stay separate there?
Mr. Mayor, through to the councillor. So let's start off with Alert Ready. Alert Ready is a national system, has either intrusive or non-intrusive, but really the Alert Ready platform is when you don't want to give individuals a choice of whether or not they're going to get the message or not. And in the document here, you'll see quite a comprehensive list of the types of emergencies that can be used in Alert Ready. Halifax Alert is subscription based. Mm-hmm. So we tend to use those in lower level pieces where we don't need mandatory necessarily compliance. We also use it to amplify other things that are happening in there. So that is an evolving area in relation to, and you mentioned Halifax Water. So Halifax Water, we've just recently brought Halifax Water on as through the CAO to allow them to identify and authorize their own alert readies based on the previous boil water pieces. They worked through a process and a way of doing it. So they now have a policy. I don't want to speak to them, but they now have a policy based on feedback received from those 2 previous incidents. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's pretty well established right now in relation to that. And there was another agency, I'm sorry, you had, the bridge.
The bridges.
Yeah, so the bridges, the picric acid is probably the best one. It wasn't necessarily a bridge really issue. It wasn't an issue on the bridge, mm-hmm. but we had very close contact with bridge officials through the incident command at site, and then that was linked back through our EMO. And then when the decision was made to utilize the alert due to the potential of the crane, I'm sorry, of the picric acid, I'm thinking about the crane event. Yeah. We had 2 of them on the bridges on 2 different Fridays. In both situations, quite frankly, we were in tight. So the Bridge Commission, where they could come to us if there's an event, or they could go directly to the province for an alert ready.
Okay. So
they're a provincial entity.
So the bridge has the choice to go through us or the province with alert ready.
It's one of the areas that I think in the evolving bridge piece that we need to get a little bit tighter on, to be quite honest with you. But in both of those cases, those were decisions made because the impact was municipal. We were the ones that made the decision to utilize the alert ready.
Okay. And Halifax Water using alert ready goes through us or the province?
So in relation to the boil up water,
yeah.
they have the ability now to go directly into the system to issue they don't have to come through HRM.
Okay. Thanks so much.
I'd like to add to Bill's answer to your question regarding the Halifax Water alerts. Mm-hmm. So currently, we're following the existing guidance through the National Alert Ready system because that's the best information the province has, and that's what's provided to municipalities. But one of the things that is also being discussed is around the water alerting, more refinement to get clarification and consistency across the province. So I envision that through the CAO advisory table, through municipal utilities, and engaging with Nova Scotia Environment and Capital Health, there will be some future refinement on when and how alerts are currently used. Right now, the intrusive alerts, the guidance in the national program is you only issue alerts if there is an imminent threat to life or personal property, essentially. So we have now delegated authority to Halifax Water that they can make the call directly to issue the alerts, and we will be following whatever guidance the province continues to provide on how and when we issue alerts.
Interesting. Thanks.
Councillor, I think the floor is still yours if you're okay. All right, we'll go to Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one here is part of our strategic planning for emergency preparedness. This might be a public works inquiry. Has there been any communication with local property owners for the possibility of an HRM or provincial collaboration of acquiring land, in particular from Pockwalk Road, which would also include residents of Upper Hammonds Plains, to Hammonds Plains Road as an alternative route, a public road or an emergency egress road? Have we been talking to local property owners in the area?
So what I can say from the emergency management side is that we have had staff attend meetings with the community, but the actual, the road work and the egress work is being done under the public works.
Okay, because I've had a local property owner reach out to me to want to help mitigate the process of the emergency and public works. So I was just wondering who I would direct that to.
Come to me and I can make sure I can get it to Brad English, but between Brad and I, we will make sure, if you want to send that to me, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go to Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been asked to put the motion on the floor so we make it all appropriate. Put the following motion on the floor that the Executive Standing Committee receive a presentation on the Emergency Management Project Charter and Crisis Communications Plan. So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Cuddle, and why don't we just go ahead and dispense with that, and then we'll come back to Councillor Hartling. Do it at the end? Okay. All right, thanks, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Hartling.
Oh, sorry, no, I have comments. That was just
well then, by all means, please continue.
If I may, sorry. I want to build on the conversation Councillor Cuddle and I initiated, the role of the elected official. There seems to be there's a missing piece here. I understand the process, and I agree with the process, that information is going to go to the councillor's office, and so we get the right information. But truly, I think there should be another step in between those two, that you're engaging the councillor of that area in some sort of, if it's unfortunately a multiple day crisis, they're part of that daily debrief. Maybe there's information shared with that councillor that, look, this is what's happening. You cannot share this information, but this is what's going on. Here's what you can share. There needs to be that in-between piece, in my opinion, right? And full guidance. Residents are looking for leadership during times of crisis, whether it's major crisis or, we've had, unfortunately, in my area, we had a shooting that led to a homicide. They're looking for the mayor or the police chief or the council of that area. Most likely it'll be easier for the council of that area to step up and say, hey, here's what's happened. Everybody take it easy, calm down, showing leadership, showing so residents will be calm. Soon as they don't have information, that's when that misinformation gets out there. They fill in the gap. So I just encourage that maybe in between step of the council area being briefed and being clear on what he or she can share and can't share. The Eric Spicer building, you mentioned that. For my colleagues who have not been in there when there's a crisis, it's amazing. We have the province, sometimes the feds, and the municipality. Our residents should be very pleased and confident that that is a oiled machine that's in there. Everybody are leaders in their communication. They're taking the lead from our folks when it's something, and it's remarkable to witness. And so we should be very proud of that operation. So I just want to mention that. You know, Brett, you mentioned clear and plain language during a crisis. I agree wholeheartedly. I will suggest that should be our approach on a day-to-day basis, outside of crisis. Plain, clear language. Mrs. Jones, who lives in Woodlawn, who is 80, can only comprehend, for the most part, that plain and clear language. So we should apply that to day-to-day operations, in my opinion. I do want to ask about the Halifax Alert, though, and you may not have it now, but I'm looking for, you know, how many people have signed up, what percentage it is? It functional? Because in the past, I've heard challenges with it, not getting information. I've signed up, I'm not getting it, and it's not maybe clear to the actual resident on, you know, what it's used for, as you've been sharing with us today. And the last question I have, and I'll turn it over. So can you explain the Halifax, the Harbor East Marine Drive location? We now have all the cameras set up there. Is that the place where all the press conferences will take place during these types of crises? Just to confirm that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through the chair to you. I'll tackle the media center question and then hand it over to Bill on the question about HFX Alert. The media center we've set up at HEMDEC has gone. Took a number of months to establish it, to make sure the right equipment is in there, and this was really to address some of the challenges we were having in the past with insufficient capacity to provide media briefings at Eric Spicer, because we were really relegated to the rotunda in the lobby, issues with lighting, issues with sound. And so with the support and direction of the CAO's office, we were able to establish a dedicated location in that space to ensure we had proper equipment to allow for live streaming, to allow for a space for hookups for the media in attendance to plug right into the sound and ensure that the visuals and the audio work, and that also it's equipped to support on accessibility the capacity for either on-site or remote assistance with captioning and with ASL. So we're meeting kind of standards now that we weren't meeting in the past, and it will be activated in the event of an emergency in that direction of in support with public safety, and through activation of the EOC, that becomes the place where the media briefings would occur.
Good.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hartling, please.
Oh, sorry, there's an answer.
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor.
That's okay. Mr. Mayor, through to Deputy Mayor Mancini. In relation to Halifax Alert, I maybe we take that one offline, but what I would say is that there is an ability to limit geographically where alerts go. So some people may not get them if they're not in that area. So that could be part of it. I don't know which particular one it is, but if there's some specific issues that people are feeling it's not working, then let us know. Laura Bryan in the Emergency Management Office is kind of the lead on that, and we've got our governance structure in place in the back end. So if there are particular pieces, I'd like to know a little bit more about them. But those are some of the things that come to mind right off the top. If someone says, "Well, you got one, but I didn't get one," well, were you in the designated area at the time when the alert went out?
It sounds like there's more education and more opportunity to push more people to sign up on it. They're not there.
And what I could say is that, so one of the things we've been doing is we've revisited the governance structure, we've revisited the privacy impact statement, and we're actually relooking now at additional uses across, now that we've got a more solid foundation, that to look at what else can we do with that system.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you, Bill. I just will share here that while we're sitting here, I've just signed up for HFX Alert. I hadn't up until now. It took about 45 seconds, and I would encourage every resident to do the same.
Mr. Mayor, we had a former councillor who never been on ferry before.
Is that right? I find it hard to believe. Councillor Hartling, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you very much. I'm going to bring up one last thing, because I know that Colin, you and I have talked about it. Bill, you and I have talked about it as well. Given so many communities are desperate for understanding what an evacuation plan might look like. If you're in, District 13, fires, floods, hurricanes, these are your, reality on the daily, depending on the time of year. And people are anxious to understand what an evacuation or, post-serious incident might look like for them. Given that, as I understand it today, an evacuation plan that they can put on their fridge is not something that they're going to get? Are we telling them then that you can expect notifications via HFX alert? Like, is the intent of this communication plan also to address how folks can understand what a real emergency might look like in their community?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor to the council. Yes, evacuation planning is front and foremost of residents' minds. We are looking at what best advice we are engaging at community level with as the inquiries come in to give direction. The issue with the plan on the fridge, it will not apply to every single emergency. And what we don't want to do is give out, false information that people would maybe perhaps take it on board, because it's very, very contextual. From an emergency management point of view, we look at the context, we look at the resource we have available, we look at the on-scene incident command, what they're looking to do, and proceed on that basis. And that's why the ICS structure is very, very useful, because it's very scalable and very flexible to deal with these types of events.
Okay. So my question, my follow-up then is that, has this ever been test driven? Has anybody actually tried to use this in a meaningful way? Because I'm not gonna lie, my suspicion is that this is going to be very clunky. And so given that things change minute to minute, my question is that, are we prepared to actually test drive this and see how effective it is in real time? Or has that already happened and I just don't know?
Are you referring to the Alert Ready?
No, not so much, but in terms of like delivering like real-time evacuation notices, that is my first one. And then, just given everything that I know, like for example, GEM, Joint Emergency Management, I did not see them included in this plan either. So I'm just quite worried, honestly, that like this might this might look effective on paper, speaking to the municipality. I worry that it doesn't serve the micro needs of the singular community being affected, if I could put it that way. And I guess that concern for me is heightened, whereby, having had those conversations, there is no evacuation plan. There is no, this is going to be your comfort center. This is, given that we can't front load information to people, that they're going to have to take it in real time.
I am going to jump in.
Yeah, thank you.
So depending upon the type of event, once we activate ICS, there are command and general staff positions. Some of the core positions that are going to exist in any situation, one is a communications officer. This document sets really the framework that the emergency management group will use, depending upon the type of event, where it's at, what's involved. There'll be very specific, communications plans done in accordance with the requirement of the event. So I'm not sure what additional comfort we can offer, other than we do have tabletop exercises that the municipality will do with other agencies. That one component of it would be making sure we're doing an exercise. Okay, if we have to evacuate this community, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to send the notices? So there are tabletop exercises where we would get to practice.
That does happen.
Utilizing, and we also do tabletop exercises with external agencies, the province, Nova Scotia Power, Halifax Water, whoever else needs to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Oh, to say it one more time, I did notice that GEM was not included. Is that by design, or is that just like another stakeholder that's kind of in the list of stakeholders?
And I'll throw it definitely in terms of the listing of audiences, we work through and have in the past with GEM through emergency management. So I'll take a look at the plan to see if it wasn't named specifically, but the GEM groups are definitely a key part of our effort in terms of communicating with folks on the ground who are playing a role on the ground with emergency response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a motion on the floor, colleagues, and no further names on the list of speakers. Shall we have the question? Thank you. Oh, it's just a hand vote then. All those in favor of having received this presentation? Thank you. I'm glad it passed. We had to have you take all that back. Thank you, friends, very much for all your work. Appreciate it. Colleagues, we'll move on to 13.1.1. We actually have two items from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. 13.1.1 is a presentation of the 2024 annual report. We will have a motion after the presentation to accept the report, but for now it's my great pleasure to welcome Céline Vautour, the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And Céline, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Fillmore. Okay, so it's my first time presenting here. Most of the time I'm online, so it'll be a bit bizarre for me to do this, so bear with me. So for the presentation, so this is the 2024 annual report for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Again, my name is Céline Vautour. I am chair of the committee. So for the presentation overview, as Elizabeth's helping me. Okay, thanks. So for the first part, we're going to discuss information about members and meetings. The second, committee priorities and presentations and discussions. So for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, we advise and assist Regional Council through the Executive Standing Committee on the impact and municipal policies, programs, and services on persons with disabilities. We meet monthly, normally the third Monday of every month, but once in a while the date is set to change. The next meeting that we have is on June 16th, 2024. We have pretty much met every month last year in 2024. Sorry about the typo, it's not 2004. But we've presented every month except for March, September, and December. These meetings were remote and live streamed. And as I say this, I highly recommend if there is something, there's a presentation that I discuss, I've put the dates on each of these slides if you want to backtrack. These live streams are now recorded versions on YouTube at the moment. Another thing that is worth highlighting, 2 monthly meetings were omitted due to the municipal election, so it did give us a few challenges to meet. Most notably, the Accessibility Advisory Committee annual town hall usually takes place in November. However, in November 2024, it was deferred to November 2025, given that we had new councillors that were going to be part of our committee while other councillors are no longer. So we can move to current committee members, as we have a nice list here. I also want to give a nod to the Vice Chair, Rochelle Minette, who has also been a very helpful individual in this process. And next we have the slides of the former committee members, which a lot of them I actually miss. So the next slide, we can move on to highlighting the 2023 work plan priorities. And I'll explain a reason why we're highlighting 2023. The priority 1, build form accessibility standards for current and future HRM infrastructure projects, including sidewalks and other HRM-owned infrastructure. The second priority is the AAC engagement throughout the municipal budget planning process. And priority 3, accessible parking in the HRM. So I wanted to highlight that we're highlighting 2023 and not a work plan for 2024. We had decided to continue with the 2023 work plan as we weren't able to complete the mission with that one. So moving on to focus on priority 1, as I have explained what it is first. So the first part, we're going to take a look at the staff presentations that we had. So we had 4 staff presentations, and I will break them down. So the HRM accessibility strategy with Melissa Myers as our accessibility advisor. We also had a presentation with snow removal in the HRM, also temporary pedestrian travel paths. And again, we had an updated accessibility strategy draft recommendation meeting. And so as we focus on the HRM accessibility strategy, there are 5 focus areas, which we have public transportation, built environment, goods and services, information and communication, and employment. Key points for public transportations that I would like to highlight is the barriers to using Halifax Transit. It's actually quite a hot topic at our meetings. We do discuss how it can shape a disabled person's life as, you know, trying to gain employment and even just to get around, not necessarily for medical appointments, because it just seems to always be the focus with Accessibus, but yet, you know, the quality of life for disabled people could be enhanced with that consideration that they too would like to have access to this community. We also talked about Accessibus booking delays and limited ticket purchase locations. Sorry, this font is way small, so I'm going to be squinting a little more. I am not angry. So, sorry, this really got me. Okay, so, oh, yeah, I should, yeah, actually, if you could, because it was the second slide, if you moved to the, oh, okay, perfect, thank you, that actually works. Okay, because my eyes were starting to break. So, and then the third key point is interest in snow clearance practices and moving forward to a together plan. If you can reverse to the, thank you. And as far as it goes for goods and services, the key points is to improve accessibility in planning, development, and public services, most notably 311 and online platforms. We also are looking to align with Access by Design 2030 and address diverse disability needs, which the Access by Design 2030 is from the Government of Nova Scotia. We can move to the next slide, thank you. When we take a look at key points for built environment, we are looking to improve physical accessibility in public spaces and HRM buildings, also to provide accessibility training for all HRM staff. Information and communication, we are looking to add live chat and use plain, clear language on signage. And we also look to enhance community engagement through social media. For employment, the key points are to promote flexible accommodations for staff and also to assign duties based on individual needs. So we also, again, as I mentioned, that we had a second part meeting for the accessibility strategy. We discussed early planning for the 2025 work plan, and also the fact that we may use the 2023 work plan to guide the remainder of 2024, which we did. We requested orientation on meeting procedures and mandate, and interest in presentations from parking services. If you note the dates for parking services, it took place in February 2025, and for Halifax Transit, it took place in January 2025. And I can move on to the next slide, thank you. And so one staff presentation that we had from winter for snow removal in the HRM, we had Stephen York, Manager of Winter Operations and Training, present. And so the key topics that we had about these winter operations were HRM bylaws related to winter operations, maintenance of accessible green spaces in winter, service standards and upcoming review, staffing challenges impacting service delivery. The other staff presentation that we had, we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. Are temporary pedestrian travel paths. Now, you will notice that there are two dates, June 3rd and August 18th. A presentation from Krista Cumming, Manager of Engineer Design. The meeting was deferred, like the item was deferred to the next meeting due to loss of quorum at 6:07 p.m. So we had her back so we could, so the committee could have a better chance to bring forth key concerns of temporary walkways. One is inaccessible or unsafe pathways at construction sites, barriers for wheelchair users and visually impaired individuals, also poor signage, barricade placement, and even surfaces, and also the impact on accessible parking and lack of standard enforcement. The one on standard enforcement, I highly recommend to look into that. Next, we are going to continue with priority 1. For this, it will be highlighting the joint presentations that we had between staff and members of the public. We can move to the 3 key presentations we had was for Slater Street and Connections Local Street Bikeway Project on June 17th. We also had Alderney Drive Functional Plan on August 6th and the Wrights Cove Transit Terminal on August 6th as well. So those two are in this. Actually, correction, I think it's August 19th. I think the minutes, they were written wrong on that one, so I would like to add that there should be a correction to those dates. Yes, please, thank you. Okay, so for the Slater Street and Connections Local Street Project, Courtney Pine, team lead and senior traffic and transportation engineer, and WSP and WSP, forgive me, Courtney, and Maria Jacobs, active transportation planner. So project overview was presented by both of these people. The objective is to develop a functional plan for the Slater Local Street Bikeway in north, south, and west network connections. The aim is to provide all ages and abilities, AAA, bikeway links connecting North Central and downtown Dartmouth. We discussed virtual engagement sessions, asphalt versus gravel use, and completed case studies. The next presentation we had for the Alderney Drive Functional Plan with, again, Courtney Pine and Maria Jacobs, and also Brianna Ritzel. So for active transportation, the committee feedback, we highlighted that there were of preferred structures to separate walkways from busy roads, balance between traffic flow and active transportation needs, the priority for dedicated bus lanes and support for diverse transport modes, and concerns about the lane reductions and safety on multi-use pathways. We can move on to the third presentation. That's good, yes? Yeah. And so the correct date is there on August 19th, not August 6th. This was a presentation from Alana O'Halloran, Associate Arcadis, and Charlie Hong, Transit Architecture Lead, and Arcadis and Matthew Glynn, Project Manager. So the committee feedback that we had for the terminal design was to add more seating in designated bays, ensure bus schedule text is clear and legible, address cigarette litter in planters and designate pickup drop-off zones, and also to consider sound impacts from glass buildings to explore acoustic paneling. The next slide that we have is going to cover priority 2, which is the AAC engagement throughout the municipal budget planning process. And so to read the Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference, the duties of the committee shall advise council through the Executive Standing Committee on matters related to persons with disabilities as follows, and to advise council on disability issues that may have an impact on the budget planning process through the budget committee of the whole process. However, to highlight here, the AAC was not engaged in the budget planning process. Thank you. And now that we move on to priority 3, the engagement throughout the municipal, oh, sorry, that was a typo. I did this since 4 a.m, so obviously I was going to make one mistake. But to clarify for priority 3, it's the for accessible parking in the HRM. So we carry this priority from 2023. However, we had this presentation in February 2025. We don't give up. We make sure that we don't let anything slide. So we had Jeff Nephew, team lead, senior advisor for parking planning. He gave us a presentation, provided an overview of accessible parking initiatives in the HRM, and responded to committee questions and feedback. The discussion included availability, design, and enforcement of accessible parking spaces. So for presentations not related to a specific priority, we have 3 to talk about right now. The first one is about Invisible Disabilities presentation that occurred on February 26, and the Sail Able Nova Scotia presentation that happened also on February 26. The third is the HRM's approach to homelessness, planning for winter, and other updates that happened on October 7th in 2024. To break these down, we'll move on to the next slide. So for the 2 first presentations that were held on the same day, we had Kelsey Green of Complex Trauma Canada. The presentation explained that complex trauma comes from repeated long-term experiences like abuse, assault, trafficking, or high conflict environments. Another key thing to highlight is that this trauma can severely impact mental, emotional, and physical health, leading to PTSD, addiction, suicide risk, and nervous system disruption. For Sail Able Nova Scotia, presented by Kevin Penny and Jamie Rigel of Sail Able Nova Scotia, the presentation highlighted adaptive sailing opportunities available throughout Nova Scotia. It was noted that 5 organizations currently offer sailing programs for persons with disabilities. And for the next slide, this to explain a little better, this I had, because I've been chair for a year now, it's been since June, but the first time that I've first time that I attended a presentation by Max Chauvin, the Director of Housing and Homelessness. He had very strong key points that I'd like for people to pay attention to, because I do feel as an advocate is something that are important to focus on. So in these presentations, there were ongoing updates and planning. Max Chauvin, Director of Housing and Homelessness, gave a presentation in November of 2023 for the annual town hall, and on October 7th in 2024, outlining HRM's winter planning and broader homelessness response. Now, for statistics, and it really held dear to me because I was present at the annual town hall in 2023, and it really hit me when we are discussing a high prevalence of disabilities among the unhoused. Out of 200 individuals, many reported mental health challenges, and also cognitive challenges. So like out of 200 individuals, you would have 67 people who will identify with a mental health challenge. And in percentage, 39% of the 200 identified with a cognitive disability, and 20% with a brain injury challenge as well. There are accessibility barriers to finding housing in the HRM. Affordable housing is often in older, inaccessible buildings and units with supports that are too costly for those with low income, and most often disability living with a disability kind of means this unfortunate default that you will live with a lower income than most. We also focused on the humanitarian focus at the municipal level. While housing is a provincial responsibility, the municipality provides basic aid to those sleeping rough, many of whom have disabilities. So I really do invite to kind of change the scope. Sometimes we even talk about addiction, but addiction is not a choice. It's also referred to as a disability. So, and to move on to the last of it, for committee-led discussions, we had the 2023 Town Hall debrief, discussion of the 2024 work plan discussion, and discussion of the 2025 work plans. We love discussing plans. Next, we go to thanking you all for taking this time to listen to this presentation. And I would like to especially thank Melissa Myers, the Accessibility Advisor, Laura Bain, Accessibility Coordinator, and Elizabeth McDonald, the Legislative Assistant. So I thank you so much. And I can open the floor if anyone has any questions, or is it you, Mayor Andy Fillmore, that opens the floor? I've been using this as a facilitator as a joke, so it's a habit.
Let's do it together. How about that? Yeah. Okay, let's open the floor together. And I see Councillor White, and perhaps Councillor, as you sit on the committee, you might like to put the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Celine. I'll move the motion that the Executive Standing Committee accept the report dated April 17th, 2025. Thank you. Thank you, Celine. That was really thorough, everything that's been done. And I was checking back to see, was I there in November? No, it wasn't. So it's everything I've been there has been since 2025. But to do so much in a year is really impressive. And everything that I've been there to learn and hear about and have discussions is great. So both the committee can learn from the presenter, and then the presenter, Celine, goes through everyone there to give their comments and questions if they have any. So there is some dialogue there. To more of a question, did any motions come out of the 2024 season of, were you able to bring anything to ESC, or is that?
Oh, okay. I don't know the audio-visual thing going on. Actually, this would probably be a question to ask even Elizabeth, because I've only been part of this committee since May, and then when we had our first meeting in June, I was chair. So I don't recall we even passed any motion. And however, I would not be able to answer if we passed any motions beforehand, but I can definitely forward that question and get back to you for that one.
It's okay. Just curious. That I definitely see the value in what we're doing there in the discussion, but would be good to know. And then the other thing I had a question about was just a lot of those priorities you have are kind of ongoing. You'll never check it off. So will the committee be looking at maintaining those priorities or changing them for going forward?
Hold on. Okay. As far as the 5 focus priorities that we had discussed, it will always remain, especially when we're talking about transit, employment, those will always be kind of something that we're going to circle around to try to have presentations on these topics. Yeah. Hold on. I'm just trying to the slide with the focus. That's why I'm just trying to hang on to dear life for my memory. Okay. Yeah. If you could have the slide with for Melissa Myers, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the next one after. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so that's it. Built environment, especially because, again, as we highlighted before, especially even in housing, even for employment, to get a job, to go shopping, to even be able to enjoy life and go to an event, built environment is something that we're always going to focus on. Again, too, the province has a mandate that we are fully accessible by 2030. I do not believe that this will be possible, but we are aiming towards it no matter what. The other focus as well, we talk about information and communication, we haven't really had too many presentations on signage, which is something that I'd like to have. But the difference too that comes up with signage, some of it we think it's municipal, but it actually turns out to be of a provincial jurisdiction. And goods and services is something that I focus on a lot, even just as an advocate. And so I always like to try to bring on some pressure, especially when we're talking about the Department of Community Services. Like, again, like we're having a hard time separating provincial issues with municipal issues because they kind of really web together. It's really hard to separate these two jurisdictions. So when it comes to goods and services, one big focus I have is just access to services that are well vetted, that confidentiality and safety concerns are well looked at. And even just the fact of, let's say, for example, when a person is trying to access a provincial location such as Access Nova Scotia, the amount of time that it takes to even trying to get to Bears Lake from downtown is virtually impossible unless you have a vehicle. I don't know if I'm going to share one thing, but I think it gives an example. Like, I've been trying to get a driver's license. It's been my barrier to employment, and honestly, trying to get out there, it's like a 2-3 hour ordeal. And how even the test is designed, I always fail by 1 or 2 because open-ended questions don't work with my disability. So often, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of an example. Like, employment services sometimes is not at a high standard. That's another thing I really want to give a lot of attention to, that sure, we have organizations like care organizations within the HRM, but do I believe that they are really held to a high standard? My answer is no.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just finish by telling everybody our town hall is November 5th at the Central Library if you're interested in coming. Thank you, Celine.
Thank you very much, and we'll move to, the CIO wanted a word.
Thank you. I was trying to get on the board, but our system works a little bit differently. I don't get a held spot, so I have to lean over to the mayor and interject. But I wanted to thank you very much for your presentation. I thought it was excellent. And for the members of the committee, I wanted to let you know that Melissa Myers, our accessibility coordinator, is primarily how we get the input that feeds into the budget and business planning process. But the Accessibility Advisory Committee has a very important role in providing advice and feedback that staff and business units who come to present use to help develop their future plans and to tweak their service delivery. And I also wanted to make sure, as chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, that the committee is aware that also the committee itself could choose to make a written submission to the budget committee during the budget process, or any member of the committee can also come out and speak during public participation during the budget process, and you'd be welcome to do that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And we'll go to Councillor Cuttle, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for the presentation. Just to kind of echo the CIO's comments, advisory committees play such an important role in providing a lens on the work that we do here, through their different areas of expertise and experience. And so having an advisory committee kind of look at our goods and service built environment, public transportation, and provide that input that might not otherwise exist internally is just really critically important. So I just want to recognize the work that your committee does and how much it is appreciated. In the presentation, for the receiving presentations, I saw you noted Sail Able. I'm a big fan of Sail Able, and I'm glad to see that. Was that presentation just February past, or is that one that happened?
Actually, I'm glad you asked. Like, that happened in 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss one.
Yeah.
I think I attended that one. Yeah. That's great. And that's an example of information that it's an important conduit to be able to receive that information and share that information. Providing programming like that is so specialized. It's not necessarily something the municipality can take on itself, but I do think it's something that we should support for providing recreation opportunities for people, with accessibility or accessibility challenges. And so, that's another key role I see for this committee. The one thing I did want to kind of touch on was about the transit stops and transportation, and I hear about that. Story I have is a local woman who lives in District 11, lives in Herring Cove, which is outside, the urban core. As soon as you get outside the urban core, the bus stops, the sidewalks, even to just go anywhere within one's own community puts people at risk because they're wheeling on the roads. Or in this case, the bus won't drop the person off at their local cafe because the cafe bus stop doesn't have a concrete pad, and so can't get dropped off where they want to get dropped off because of lack of our kind of public transportation infrastructure. And if there's one thing that I think we need to keep, driving home here is the importance of our public transportation infrastructure, even outside of the urban core, because I see more and more people, it's an affordability issue. And we see people moving outside of the urban core because they can't afford to live there. And as soon as you get outside that urban core, the infrastructure to support people it's a lot less. And so we need to be thinking about those pieces through an equity and accessibility lens. And I'm not prepared right now, but just based on this presentation and the conversations, I would be interested in getting an information report from Halifax Transit on the strategy for where we are with upgrading our bus stops to enable greater accessibility, because I think that's something that happens on the side, and I think we need to put it more front and center. Anyway, thank you very much for being here and for the presentation.
Not used to this microphone. Just apologies. Yes, for bus stops, I definitely would like for us to dig a little deeper on that topic, because as a transit user, I can tell you there are some bus stops too that the make of the bus stop itself has the right correct width. However, let's say I would like to invite councillors to even look at this. If you take the bus 28 to get to Bears Lake from the Mumford terminal, the bus stop that you take to, there's one bus stop in particular when you get down, the sidewalks are correct, but on each side, there's a retaining wall that people have to climb up, and then get this, there's pebbles. So it's like you're walking on Lawrencetown Beach to get to an intersect and then get through a parking lot that is a little dangerous because it's also a drive-through, so big trucks, and then when you get to, you have to also, hop over. So I think too, it's like having to look a little bit more broader than what is the make of the bus stop itself, like what's outside of it also matters, would be my point.
It's in the budget for this year to do some improvements to Mumford. That's one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's ridiculous how long it's been that bad. Anyway, there are improvements coming, I believe, this year. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll move to Councillor Gilgama, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Celine. That was probably one of the most detailed presentations for Accessibility Advisory Committee that we've seen in a while. And thank you, colleagues. I don't know if you know, but Celine came in to take on as chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee after the very untimely passing of our friend Andrew Taylor. And, that's not always easy, Celine, and you did a great job. So thank you for that. And, I was happy to spend 4 years on the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And when we talk about motions, well, the one that comes to mind the most is that at an accessibility town hall, we heard the request for a voluntary vulnerable persons registry. So from the town hall and that discussion, then it came through as a priority for the committee, and the committee made the motion, which came to regional council, and we now have a voluntary vulnerable persons registry, which really is the envy of some other municipalities across Atlantic Canada, and people are looking at what's happening here. So it's an amazing piece of work that was done by this advisory committee. So I think sometimes we forget to give the good credit to where the origins of some of our motions come from. And definitely that's one that came from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And so kudos to a group well done. And the other place that we really, as councillors that sit on the committee, there's an opportunity through the development of the work plan to know exactly, bring forward what we hear as councillors to the advisory committee as well. And that shared lived experience with the elected experience makes for a really healthy terms of reference and priority plan for the committee. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, colleagues. There's a motion on the table. What's your pleasure? A question. Thank you. And it's a hand vote, of course. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the report of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, please signify by raising your hand. And that is approved unanimously. I'm going to say thank you to you in a moment, but first I just want to dispense with the second motion. And Councillor White, perhaps you also would like to put that on the floor. There's no presentation regarding it, but Céline is here to answer any questions. So, Councillor White. Oh,
I'll second in advance. Councillor Deagle-Gammon
Now that I
would
flip my screen to the correct board, I see that Councillor Deagle-Gammon was already up there. So, Councillor Deagle-Gammon, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The motion is that the Executive Standing Committee request a staff report to consider recognizing October 16 annually as Treat Accessibility Day as part of the Treat Accessibility Initiative. And just, rather quickly, but not to take away from the value of this either, there is the Accessibility Committee did receive a report. Mr. Mayor, you and I and some other members, I believe, received an email from a young person who was making this their mantra to have a national day across Canada. There is a professor at Dal who actually lives in Fall River, Sarah Moore, who lives in Fall River now, but Sarah does a lot of beautiful work around accessibility and youth. And in Fall River, she started the first sort of Treat Accessible street party as well. So I'm sure that Sarah would love to see this. So I'm really hopeful that everybody sees this as a good thing. And when we think about how do we keep our children safe and enjoy a holiday and make it as inclusive as possible, this allows for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I don't see any names on the board. Shall we have the question? And all those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. So Céline, thank you so much for your time that you took to prepare today, your hard work on the committee as well. Under your leadership, the committee provides us with invaluable assistance in running the municipality to the best way that we can, and we always strive to do better. So thank you very much, and I don't miss you. I didn't overlook your jack-o'-lantern. Very well placed. Appreciate that very much as well. So thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you another time. And this brings us, colleagues, to the in-camera portion of the meeting. It seems that there are only minutes, so I'm going to turn to the Deputy Mayor, please.
I'll test the committee, Mr. Mayor, that the in-camera, in-private minutes of April 28, 2025 be approved as circulated. So moved.
Second.
Saw Councillor Deagle-Gammon's hand up there first. All those in favor, colleagues, show of hands, and the minutes are approved. And I believe that's it, Mr. Clerk. Does that sound right to you? Okay, well, is there a motion to adjourn? Councillor Hartling, thank you very much. And have a great day, everybody.